Welcome back. Still here in Wausau, Florida at the Emergency Management Center. Just had a good conversation with Lynn Abel, Public Safety Director. Here now with Gabe Tischler from Catholic Charities. Gabe, you find yourself in the center of a perfect storm here. We are certainly not through this state of emergency. Whether it's a technically declared state or federal state of emergency really doesn't make any difference to somebody who can't drive down their road, who can't get to school, who can't avail themselves of emergency services if they need them. Let's start at the beginning. Early on in July, we started having rain here. Very few July 4th events took place because it was just a total rain washout. There was a state of emergency here, per Lynn Abel declared. It lasted about a week at that point, and everybody said, wow, that was bad, but hopefully we're over it. August 16th, the skies opened again. The rest is history. We've experienced the better part of 2 months now of lots of water and subsequent road washouts, roads being closed. What we're talking about now is the way that it's impacted people personally. I was extremely surprised and heartened to hear from Lynn that there was a neighbor helping neighbor, for lack of a better term, effort underway, coordinated in large part by yourself and other agencies. Talk a little bit about what you do and why you're here and how that all works.
My role as emergency management specialist is to activate the disaster operations plan that Catholic Charities of Florida has. We're able to respond to local disasters and large disasters as well from the faith-based perspective. So what that entails is that we reach out to the local community to identify what people's needs are. Of course, we look at the whole picture, whether FEMA will be assisting, what kind of local capacity there is, and how we can build that local capacity so the community can recover on its own. And that's basically what this whole response is based on, that is to build that local capacity and empower the local community to be able to recover by itself, because there is no FEMA monies available for people that are still living with buckets on their beds.
When we have this kind of weather, when we have this kind of rain specifically, with lots of wind and other associated elements, if you're going to have potential problems with your home, that's when they're going to show up.
That's right.
That little leak that shows up 3 times a year when you have that torrential downpour, and you can put up with it because it makes a little spot on your sheetrock ceiling. A whole lot different when your ceiling's coming down and your shingles are coming off the roof because your roof is rotting away because of the extended rain. As Lynn pointed out, there are some people that don't have enough damage to qualify for FEMA, or the area in itself in whole doesn't qualify for FEMA. Try telling that to the guy, as you point out, with a bucket on his bed, trying to keep his house from falling apart around him, or who still has a front yard full of water. Talk a little bit about the different organizations that form your initiative here.
So one of the roles that I play as Catholic Charities Emergency Management Specialist is to reach out to other faith-based and partner organizations, not only locally but throughout the state and nationally as well. So, you know, my role is to be a coordinating, kind of an orchestrator. I connect dots. Essentially, that's all I do. You know, we have established partners. There's a Florida voluntary organizations active in disaster. That encompasses the Lutherans, the Presbyterians, Methodists, Red Cross, the food bank. You know, there's a whole wide array of faith-based and nonprofit organizations that become active after a disaster. So, you know, initially, that's one of the first things that we do is reach out to Florida BOAD, it's called, to ensure that there's awareness and to see if we can bring in immediate resources right after the disaster to provide the basic needs. Of course, Red Cross does an excellent job of, you know, feeding people and make sure that they have, you know, temporary lodging if they have to move out, or to meet their basic needs. What we do now is we take it a step further, and we aim to repair their lives and repair their homes as well.
You know, I got to tell you that the thing that impresses me about this is that not to editorialize, but I believe that much of our national problem is because people have a sense of entitlement and they don't want to give back. In this case, we are truly talking about a neighbor helping neighbor situation here. And you hope that at the end of the day, when you have these kinds of efforts, that that person who you're helping someday is going to turn around and you've paid it forward, and hopefully he's going to pay it back and be involved in some kind of a community effort, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or whether it's volunteering for a Red Cross or Catholic Charities or Southern Baptist Convention. Where do you go from here? I know that right now we're experiencing probably the second day of dry when it hasn't rained. So as Lynn pointed out, there's still assessment being done. Right. We don't even know the extent to which homes have been damaged, how people have been impacted. In many cases, people not even realizing that they can maybe qualify for some of this help.
That's right.
Let's start with how they would contact your organization or who within your organization if they thought that there was an opportunity maybe to get a little bit of relief and help from you.
Local emergency management has collected a list of names that people have called in seeking assistance. So they shared that list of names with us, and Catholic Charities, what we have been doing is reaching out to these people on this list and calling them, asking them to come in for case management. So case management, basically what it means is we're not just going to hand them food and maybe put a tarp on the roof. Not that any of those things are a bad thing, but case management looks at the whole person and what the whole situation is. So we'll investigate, what their living situation was before the disaster, what happened after the disaster, and then how we can help them in their own recovery, help themselves get back to what will never be normal, but kind of a normal state. So, as far as qualifying, our focus right now is we triaged the list, which means that we went through and we've identified the people that are either disabled, elderly, or both, families with small children that have called in, and those are the 3-4 main focus areas that we're establishing right now.
And as you can see, always on call. I like your ringtone.
Can you cut that for a second?
Yeah.
This is Mayor Vernon.
Go ahead. When we talk about qualifying, we talk about the fact that you're going to look into a person's lifestyle prior to the disaster. If you show up someplace and the roof is falling in, you want to know that that roof wasn't falling in prior to the disaster.
That's right.
Not that that person is probably less desiring or needy or desiring of your help, but at the end of the day, you're trying to restore somebody's quality of life, not necessarily to improve it to pre-storm conditions. We've seen some what we call a perfect storm. Our county here in Washington County, Florida, was impacted quite a bit more than surrounding counties per the Department of Transportation, from their perspective anyway. When we got started, you spoke briefly in the pre-show. We agree that this has not been a sexy disaster. It has not been one of those that necessarily makes national news, although there has been some mention here and there, particularly on the Weather Channel. But when the tornado hit Joplin, Missouri, or when the hurricane hit the Northeast and the New Jersey coast and did the damages that it did, those are going to be obviously a lot more poignant disasters. But at the end of the day, if somebody loses their home, if they can't drive out of their home to go to the hospital or to get groceries, that's still the worst day of their life.
That's right.
So everything is relative. Talk a little bit about what you've seen here, the extent of our rainfall, and what got your attention to make you realize that we probably needed the help that obviously you're trying to coordinate here.
Well, part of my role is to monitor emergency communications that comes from the State Emergency Management Office. And I noticed that Washington County, right after the July 2nd event, requested 200 tarps for roofs. And to me, that meant that there's going to be an extreme need in Washington County. So, there was a little bit of struggle, but they received their roofs. Of course, the West Florida Baptist Association utilized those tarps, and the volunteer fire departments as well. But I reached out to the emergency management here in Washington County to see how I can assist, and basically just to see what their local capacity was. And, they informed me that they have very low capacity. And I've talked to our executive director at Catholic Charities in the Panhandle, and, kind of let him know what the needs are. Of course, he lives in the area. He knew about all the rains, but he was unaware of all the homes that have been affected. So one of the initial things that we did was emergency management shared that list, and after looking at the list of people that had called in, it was a real eye-opener that there will be a need here. And as people call in, they may tell you anything on the telephone. So what we have been doing is contacting those people on the list and asking them to come in and visit with case managers. We'll, like I said before, kind of, look at the whole picture of what that person experienced before the disaster, how the disaster may have affected them, and then how we can help them, with their own recovery. And part of that recovery is reaching out to these other faith-based organizations. Truthfully, we can't do this alone. Catholic Charities doesn't have all the money in the world to help 90 families. We just don't. So right away, I reached out to Florida voluntary organizations active in disasters, asking for their assistance. And we have some other partner organizations that I reached out to initially to come in and see how they can help us with this recovery effort. And sure enough, our partners stood up, and the faith-based organizations have once again, came forward. And, right now we have a nonprofit and faith-based organization called Hammers and Hearts. They're working with us. They'll be coordinating volunteer teams as they come in. The volunteer teams are going to be provided by organizations such as United Methodist of South Alabama, West Florida, the Presbyterians, Lutherans, and United Church of Christ have offered resources to us, whether it's food or hygiene kits or cleanup kits to eliminate mold. The faith-based community, once again, comes together to help people. I want to make it very clear that this is not a handout. This is a handout for people. We want to be able to empower them so they can help themselves recover. We expect them to be involved in the repair of their home, whether it's cooking a meal for a volunteer team that comes in or actually being out there with a hammer in their hands. That's what this is all about. Empowering that person, make sure that we respect the dignity of the human being, and part of that dignity is the dignity of work.
Well, it goes back to the old saying of you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day.
That's right.
In the time that we've been talking here, you've received a call from Michelle Cook, Mayor of Vernon. You've received a call from Ron Sharp from United Way. You're extremely busy. First of all, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. But it's very impressive that your feet are on the ground and you truly are working this situation. How long do you anticipate staying here? What typically is the lifespan? Now, all bets are off, obviously, if it starts raining again or we have some more weather. But the way it looks now, if it starts to dry up, what do you anticipate your time in this area will be, discounting the fact that there may be something more important in the way of an emergency that pulls you away?
My role, I want to make it clear, my role is to build local capacity. So I look at, being here maybe next few weeks, maybe a month at the most. Other counties have received a lot of this August rain, so I may be working in Walton County and Holmes County as well to help see how we can help those folks begin their recovery. My biggest concern, and if I may share this, is that another hurricane comes. And if a hurricane hits anywhere in the South, Washington County, this area of the Panhandle, the 4 counties that were declared a disaster by FEMA, will absolutely not receive any further help. The focus will be on the new sexy disaster.
And obviously, we still have several months of that hurricane season.
Yes, we
and
do.
we've had hurricanes beyond the season, so the season is not any door slamming. If somebody wants to find out if they may be eligible for help, if somebody wants to talk to somebody about maybe getting assessed to see if they can receive some of that help, or if they just want to get involved, if they want to volunteer, if they want to say, hey, I've got a tool belt and a hammer, how do I get involved? What's the best course of action for any of those people to take?
There's different ways to go. They can call Catholic Charities in Northwest Florida, Panama City office, or they can contact me directly, and I can share that number with you here.
Do you want to do that? Let's say
Sure.
that contact the Catholic Charities office of Northwest Florida in Panama City. You can call 411 on a cell phone. You can call information, and if you get a phone book, that should not be hard to find. Let's not give out your cell phone number. I think that's a lightning striking right there. And just in the short time that I've been with you, I don't think you need to be distracted. Gabe, thank you for what you bring to the table. The end result of much of this disaster that we find ourselves is that maybe people are not ashamed, as they may have been at one time, to profess their faith, to recognize the fact that we are in all of this together, and that it is faith that joins us all at the end of that day, regardless of any other demographic. So for what it's worth, thank you for Catholic Charities. Thank you for obviously your own personal commitment to this. And who knows where you're going to find yourself next. There's not going to be an end to it until you get too old to do this. There's always going to be some place that needs your help. But thank you for taking the time today, and best of luck. Let us know if we can help you in any way.
Sure will.
Here right now with Gabe Tischler with Catholic Charities, talking about this outreach ministry, if you would, this opportunity to help to triage, to find out who needs help, and to maybe put together those organizations that can make that help happen. As we point out, this is not an entitlement program. This is neighbors helping neighbors. This is folks who care, helping others who care, hopefully with the end result that that person who gets help today will be the helper tomorrow. We'll be right back.